Another mass shooting in the U.S. has once again raised the issue of gun violence. Yesterday's shooting on the campus of Florida State University left 2 non-students dead and 6 others injured. The suspect was injured by police and is currently hospitalized with non-life-threatening injuries. President Trump reacted to the shooting from the Oval Office, offering his thoughts to the victims, but standing firm on the politics of gun control.
As far as legislation is concerned, this has been going on for a long time. I have an obligation to protect the Second Amendment. I ran on the Second Amendment, among many other things, and I will always protect the Second Amendment.
Let's bring in Stephanie Feldman. She's the former director of the White House Office of Gun Prevention. She joins me now. Thanks for joining us this morning, Stephanie.
For having me on.
What was your reaction when you saw the news of the shooting at Florida State University yesterday?
Another tragedy that is entirely expected in this country because of our relationship with guns and gun violence, and just heartbreak for all of the families who lost loved ones, all of the students who were impacted by the shooting. We need to be demanding that the president and the Congress do more to protect lives. I heard the president say that we need to protect the Second Amendment. Yes, absolutely, but we also need to be protecting Americans from gun violence.
Yeah, I want to ask you a little bit more about that. He called the shooting terrible, horrible. He said that a few times throughout the day, but then he did add that the gun doesn't do the shooting, the people do, and that he said he would continue to protect the Second Amendment. Is he right? What is the balance here?
So when you're looking to address gun violence, you need to look at both sides. So you need to look at the individuals, make sure that you are addressing people who might be a danger to themselves or others. And you also need to look at their access to firearms. And really the goal of gun violence prevention is to make sure that you are separating people who are a danger to themselves or others and their access to the firearms. So in this case, for example, we look at this 20-year-old. How did he have access to a weapon? Looks like we're still learning the facts here, but it seems like he probably obtained his mother's firearm, which is very common in school shootings, that that young people are obtaining a firearm from their home or a neighbor's home. And then the question is, was this young adult showing signs of being a danger to himself or others? It is very rare in these cases that there isn't someone who knew that this person was experiencing some sort of emotional angst or turmoil in their lives. And there are tools we have to then take away temporarily that person's access to firearms, like red flag laws, which they have access to in Florida right now.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit more about red flag laws, because that was also a part of the reaction to the Parkland shooting that happened a few years ago. Do you think that there is a specific law or regulation that could have prevented this tragedy that happened yesterday?
Again, we're not sure all the details yet in this particular case, but it is exceedingly rare that there's a situation where a mass shooter was not previously showing any signs of being a threat to the community. That's why we have tools like red flag laws, which exist in Florida and allow individuals to temporarily petition a court to remove an individual's access to firearms so that person can then go get help instead of hurting others. This is a law that was put in place by Republican Governor Rick Scott in Florida. This is a law that President Biden tried to give Florida more resources to implement, to educate the public about how to use red flag laws effectively. Governor DeSantis refused to take that federal money to implement red flag laws in the state. And now you have Governor DeSantis saying that he wants to look to repeal the red flag law in this state, which will just make Floridians less safe.
Gun violence and laws around gun control have been one of the, third rails of American politics for such a long time. We still don't have universal background checks in this country, despite 90-something% of Americans believing that that should be the case. What do you think will change the minds of lawmakers? And now, currently, we have a Republican president, but we do know that this primarily rests with Congress. What will change their minds that we could get to a point where universal background checks could be passed?
Yeah, so we have a lot of we have a lot of progress that we still need to make to reduce gun violence, but there are reasons to hope. One reason to hope is that Congress actually passed a significant piece of gun violence prevention legislation just a couple years ago during the Biden administration, they passed the Bipartisan Safer Communities Act, which didn't reach universal background checks, but did expand background checks. It didn't create a national red flag law, but it did give states all across the country funding to educate people about state red flag laws that can keep guns out of dangerous hands. So it made really significant steps forward that we need to build upon. That bill had bipartisan support. We worked hard in the Biden administration to implement the Bipartisan Safer Communities Act effectively and show that as a result, we had declines in homicides all across the country. So what I think we need in order to get Congress to take the next step is we really need the public and gun owners and advocates for safety all across the country to make the case to Congress that they have taken bipartisan steps before. Those steps did work, and now is the time for additional action because we just can't not accept that what happened in Florida yesterday is normal.
You led the Office of Gun Violence Prevention at the White House, which was the first time that existed in a White House. As far as I know, the Trump administration has dissolved that office. It does not exist under this current administration. What do you think the potential consequences of that will be?
So if the White House Office of Gun Violence Prevention was in place today instead of being dissolved by President Trump, we would have had outreach to state and local leaders in Florida. We would have had the Department of Education talking to the Florida State University president and community, asking what additional supports and resources they need, whether that be law enforcement or mental health services. That's the type of support that we coordinated. Then the office would be looking at the fact pattern of this case. What do we know about the shooter? What do we know about how he obtained the weapon? Were there systemic issues that this shines a light on that we need to fix in order to prevent a future tragedy like this from happening? And then we would be working with that community to build them into a broader network of communities that have survived mass shootings like this one, to make sure that they have long-term support that this community is going to be needing in the years to come to deal with the grief and trauma resulting from gun violence. Those are all the types of activities that the White House Office of Gun Violence Prevention accomplished during the Biden administration, in addition to coordinating federal agencies to improve policies related to gun violence. And that's exactly the type of support that is absent today. And when we're talking about this basic support, law enforcement, mental health support, that shouldn't be partisan at all. That's fundamental efforts that the federal government should be showing to support local communities. But President Trump, by dissolving the White House Office of Gun Violence Prevention, really weakened the federal capacity to support communities like Florida State University.
Well, former director of that White House Office of Gun Violence Prevention, Stephanie Feldman, thank you for joining us and for your perspective on this.
Thank you.